Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Monday, August 24th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Awaiting word to reopen. That's what county leaders are saying as they still have not received the state's go-ahead to open restaurants and businesses back up. This comes as the county announced no new deaths and 187 new cases. The case rate remains below 100 per 100,000 people. More now from KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento.
The county's total positive coronavirus cases reached another milestone. Public Health Officer Dr. Wilma Wooten says the 36,727 San Diegans who have tested positive could fill the home stadium of the San Diego Padres.
This is equivalent to the number of seats at Petco Park.
But overall, COVID metrics have improved, and the lower amount of new daily cases pushed the county off the state's watch list. Local officials are now awaiting guidance from the state to allow businesses to reopen. Governor Gavin Newsom says that's coming this week after feedback from county health officers like Wooten.
And we will be working with others, not only in industry, but outside our local health officers and our state health authorities to socialize these guidelines.
San Diego may have improved on the state-monitored data point, but there are still more community outbreaks each week than the county's goal. Wooten acknowledged that the county could be more strict than the guidance the state may eventually release, but she didn't commit to that.
We know that the state wants to look at a tiered approach of reopening, but we do not have those clear guidelines, so I don't want to speculate here.
But when guidance is provided, Scripps Health CEO Chris Van Gorder cautioned against moving too quickly.
And if we decide to ease those restrictions, we need to do so slowly and deliberately.
He reminded the public that the region's youngest patient to die from COVID was 23.
I know exactly who that 23-year-old was and what were the circumstances of her death. She was our first death, and she died alone. Her mother and father could not be at her side. I pray for her still.
He says COVID isn't over. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
Today, the wife of former Republican Congressman Duncan Hunter was sentenced for misusing thousands in campaign money for personal gain. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says Margaret Hunter's sentencing comes more than 2 years after she and her husband were first indicted.
Today, we're all reminded that no one is above the law.
No prison time for Margaret Hunter. The wife of former Congressman Duncan Hunter was sentenced this morning to 8 months home confinement and 3 years probation for her role in misusing more than $250,000 in campaign funds for luxury hotels, vacations, and everyday purchases like groceries.
No doubt, Ms. Hunter committed very serious crimes, but Ms. Hunter's cooperation was extraordinary.
She cooperated actively. She cooperated early.
Former U.S. Attorney Chuck LaBella says he's not surprised Mrs. Hunter is avoiding prison. She struck a deal with prosecutors to plead guilty and provided key information that ultimately led to her husband's guilty plea.
The earliest opportunity that we gave Ms. Hunter to plead guilty, she accepted that plea offer, pled guilty, and cooperated from that point on.
Prosecutors say Margaret stole the campaign funds with the encouragement of the former congressman. They say turning against him was not easy and put her against the entire Hunter family, ultimately fracturing her marriage with Duncan. Prosecutors say all of that factored into their decision not to ask for prison time.
Anybody who says it's a slap on the wrist just because you get probation or home confinement, I don't think understands the mental anguish and the hardship that individuals who are investigated for months and months and months have to endure, and then after they're charged or indicted, even after they plead guilty.
Prosecutors now say Margaret is in the process of rebuilding her life, quote, as a single mother, raising questions as to if she's still with the former congressman. In all, prosecutors say Margaret simply took responsibility for her actions, while the former congressman was trying to say he was a political target.
I've done nothing wrong and haven't, and they've known that for 2 years.
He blamed his wife, and he attacked the Department of Justice.
For his part, Duncan received 11 months in prison, but because of coronavirus, doesn't have to surrender until January.
We are in uncharted territory, so what happens in January, we're not going to know until we get there.
While she's on home detention, Mrs. Hunter can still leave the house for work, education, religious services, and mental health or substance abuse counseling. Her home detention and probation officially started today. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Margaret Hunter's attorney issued this statement saying his client continues to accept full responsibility. He adds that the sentence is just and takes into account her cooperation. CAL FIRE says this year's wildfires have already burned 1.4 million acres. To put it another way, an area roughly the size of Delaware. Governor Gavin Newsom says the state secured a presidential disaster declaration. Over 14,000 crews are fighting 17 major fires, including 3 in the Bay Area that span about 800,000 acres. At least 7 people have died and more than 1,200 structures have burned. In just the last 24 hours, there were 10 new fires, and the governor says there could be even more.
There are a lot of sleeper fires we expect to discover as our reconnaissance efforts, as our aerial efforts continue, particularly as the smoke begins to clear. As weather conditions change, we will be identifying likely additional fires throughout the state.
Today, a procession was held for the helicopter pilot who died while fighting a wildfire in Fresno County. Michael Fournier's remains were taken home to Rancho Cucamonga. Fournier, who spent time as a TV chopper pilot in San Diego, was working for an independent helicopter company hired by CAL FIRE. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. Wait times have gone way up as border agents make changes to discourage non-essential crossings. They say it's to slow the spread of COVID-19. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne went down to the border today to see what's going on.
Here at the busiest port of entry in San Ysidro, many essential workers cross daily to get to work, but many experiencing hours in wait time just to get across.
I get more tired of waiting in line than what I actually work. And I've done like about the same, 5 hours at work and 5 hours in line.
Over the weekend, wait times of up to 7 hours were reported as travelers tried to cross into the U.S. from Mexico through the San Ysidro and Otay ports of entry. These long wait times come after Customs and Border Protection started a new action to discourage non-essential travel to and from Mexico. They say it's to limit the spread of COVID-19. In a written statement, a CBP spokesperson said, non-essential travelers should expect more disruption to their travel, including increased wait times and the potential for secondary inspection. And he added, we need people to think twice about non-essential travel and to ask themselves if the travel is worth risking their lives and the lives of others. Essential workers like Andres and Maria, who cross on a regular basis, say this new procedure adds an extra 4 to 5 hours to their workday. Maria is an essential cleaning worker at the San Diego airport. She says when she crosses, she isn't questioned any further and has never had to provide her essential worker certification from her employer to CBP agents.
No nos preguntan tanto.
She thinks the delay is due to the lack of CBP agents and gates available. If not extended, border restrictions are expected to last until September 21st. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
It's the first day of school at San Diego State University, but the pandemic has, for now, robbed incoming freshmen of the college experience. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong spoke with new students about what classes and dorm life are like in the age of COVID-19.
Incoming students weren't greeted by the typical start-of-year fanfare. The usually crowded courtyards and lecture halls were nearly deserted on Monday as the university launched its first new semester amid the pandemic. With about 90% of classes being online only in the fall, students say the first day of school was mostly uneventful.
We don't get that feel of a 500-person chem lecture or stuff like that.
Bree Hawkins is a first-year student at SDSU. She said she's disappointed by such a quiet start to the school year, but she's grateful to feel safe on campus and in her dorm. The dormitories this year are only filled at about half capacity and will house about 3,500 students.
Our building itself has really clear protocols and policies about what to do, and me and my roommate are both really safe. We wear masks and we wash our hands and hand sanitizer and all that stuff. So I feel like we're doing everything that we can to protect ourselves.
While it remains to be seen whether the virtual instruction will go more smoothly than it did at the end of spring semester, the social life on campus is all but non-existent. In the dorms, no more than 2 people can be in the same common area. Fraternities have banned all in-person social events for the fall.
I'm really trying to kind of talk to everybody that I see in the dorm to try and make as many friends as possible.
Caitlin Jones is also a first-year student. She's trying to make the most of the bad situation and is grateful that for at least the time being, the campus isn't shut down completely.
Well, seeing all the other universities happening, and I'm just kind of I don't know. I'm just kind of nervous about it. Maybe it's just because I'm so excited to be here and I'm preparing for the worst.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
The San Diego Unified School District is expanding its free breakfast and lunch program. Last week, the Department of Agriculture moved to end the summer food services. San Diego Unified, however, is working with Feeding San Diego and the San Diego Food Bank to keep families in need fed. For the school year, this district plans to more than triple the number of meal pickup locations from 26 to 82. The district will not be distributing food from Wednesday through Friday this week, but it will be providing extra food today and tomorrow. City and county leaders are supporting $5.4 million in funding to help the homeless. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayers says the money would provide on-site mental health care services for hundreds of San Diegans.
The San Diego Housing Commission has already applied for $37.7 million in state funding to acquire 2 hotels that could be converted to house 340 homeless people by the end of the year. But to get that money, the county needs to fund behavioral services at the sites.
Today, and now it's time for the County of San Diego to step up and commit to the mental health and drug treatment services to make these housing opportunities truly work.
San Diego County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher and San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer are calling for a $5.4 million adjustment of the county budget to pay for those services. Faulconer sees the new housing residences and healthcare services as a permanent solution to the homelessness in San Diego.
That San Diego can and will exit this pandemic with fewer individuals on our streets than before, and when the counties vote tomorrow, they can have the support that will help keep them housed permanently.
The first occupants of the 2 converted hotels would be from the shelter in the San Diego Convention Center, which has about 1,000 people. Faulconer said he is proud of the city's homeless solutions over the last few months, but said more work still needs to be done.
More than 400 people have been housed, and we have another 550 in the process. That's incredible, but it's just the beginning. Our next phase of Operation Shelter to Home is focused on creating more homes, permanent homes, for hundreds more.
The Board of Supervisors will meet Tuesday to discuss and approve the county's $6.4 billion budget, including the proposed on-site healthcare services. Jacob Ayers, KPBS News.
For the first time since March, SeaWorld is almost back in business. On Friday, SeaWorld will open its doors to guests for what it's calling Zoo Days, Bayside Barbecue and Brews. Outdoor animal enclosures like the dolphin, sea lion, and orca encounter will be available. Indoor activities will remain closed. The number of guests will be limited, and the event runs through September 27th.
As we take a look at our weather headlines for today, well, looks like a mostly dry week ahead. A spotty storm or 2 in the mountains. Those will be fading. And we'll see above normal temperatures. And it's going to stay humid here the next couple of days. And then some hope at the end of the week. Friday into the weekend does look like we could have a little bit of a cooling trend. Thunderstorms will be sprinkled about the mountains, just a little bit of moisture in the area. That's why we're so humid, but just a storm in spots some of these mountains into Tuesday. And then after that, looks like most areas will stay dry. Here's our forecast for tonight. There you can see the spotty storm fading around Mount Laguna. Borrego Springs, warm. Ramona, low 60s. Escondido, 67. El Cajon, it's 71. Now, as we take a look at the conditions here for tomorrow, well, we'll enjoy sunshine as clouds fade away in the western valleys back to the coast. Oceanside's 84, San Diego's at 81. Borrego Springs goes up to 114, and Campo's at 100. And there you can see perhaps the stray storm up in the mountains. As we take a look ahead, middle part of the week, well, looks like we'll stay mainly dry, but this trough will approach for the end of the week and weekend, bringing us just a little bit of cooling. Take a look at our temperatures next couple of days. Well, it's clouds and sun. We're in the mid-80s. And as we head our way inland, temperatures will be hovering in the low to mid-90s. Pretty hot out there. And as we head up in the mountains, a spotty storm into Tuesday. After that, we are dry. And in the desert areas, it'll be dry and hot. Notice over the weekend, temperatures coming down just a little bit. The next 2 days, though, really hot. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
Hot and windy conditions can turn a spark into a firestorm, putting homes and lives at risk. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the situation isn't any easier when there's also a global pandemic to contend with.
The Apple Fire in Riverside County roared through rugged backcountry earlier this month, blackening more than 33,000 acres in just 2 weeks. Nearly 8,000 people were evacuated. 2 weeks later, a second major fire hit the region in the Angeles National Forest, the Lake Fire. California Governor Gavin Newsom says this is a much more active fire season.
While last year we experienced some acuity of fires, a Kincaid Fire, some others down Getty Fire, and some others in Southern California, the total number of fires last year was substantially lower than the activity we're experiencing this year.
Since January, there have been more than 6,700 fires in the state, up from just over 4,000 the year before. With the hottest months of the year just ahead, safety is a key priority.
We get a fire, we're tired, and that fatigue sometimes makes us a little woozy or confused.
CAL FIRE Captain Danny Ramirez is huddled with about a dozen firefighters under a shade tree near the Hamul Fire Station. It's the safety briefing before a midday hike in 100-degree heat. The big lessons today: be safe, stay hydrated, and communicate.
When it heats up in the middle of the day at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, that those triggers get back in their mind and say, hey, that's what we talked about this morning, the heat, the probability of ignition.
And then there's the threat of COVID-19. Everyone on the crew is wearing a face mask in an effort to keep from spreading the infection. Ramirez says firefighters are taking the advice of public health officials because they can't afford to lose anyone.
I'm wearing our masks, taking our temperatures every morning, double checking with everybody is probably the best thing we can do.
But Ramirez concedes that staying safe in the firehouse or during training is much easier than when the crew is battling flames in the midst of a wildfire. And he says firefighting remains their first priority.
Saving a structure or life, that COVID kind of takes a backseat to that. When we can regroup and we have to, remember that COVID, then we'll use those precautions again.
The Apple Fire was the first major fire incident where CAL FIRE also dealt with the pandemic.
Being up there in Riverside at the base camp, things were different. It was a different experience.
CAL FIRE's Thomas Schutz says there were actually 2 base camps, so firefighters didn't congregate in just one area. Food service was pre-packed, and crews that came together fought the fire together and stayed together. Fire officials want to keep the virus out of their ranks, and that's tough because some local firefighters have already been infected.
We're really lucky down here in San Diego County with CAL FIRE and San Diego County Fire. We have a lot of folks to draw from. We have 40 stations, and so even these small little blips where we have folks go out, it's not devastating to us. We're able to work through it.
What CAL FIRE officials want to avoid is creating a super spreader event during a battle against a major wildfire. The agency can't afford to lose lots of firefighters just as the wildfire season heats up.
Go on the right, keep your dying. Go on the right, keep your dying.
Juan Ramirez from Irvine and his hand crew are hiking through the East County near Jamul on this day.
Put down with the fan. Last man, got it.
He's carrying plenty of water and a heavy hand tool.
You strike vegetation and tear.
The idea is to cut through the fuel that might feed a wildfire and scrape the ground bare. The fast-paced hike is designed to physically prepare the crew for line work in dry, hot conditions. But Ramirez knows a wildfire will make it worse.
You know, it's a little hotter, it's a little drier, and you got that smoke and that low visibility, and you know, everybody's on high alert with their head on the swivel and working hard.
The wind and the heat are already issues in the backcountry, especially when there's a fire as part of the equation. COVID-19 now exacerbates that situation. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Wisconsin's governor has called in the National Guard after violent protests followed the police shooting of a black man in Kenosha. That man, Jacob Blake, is now hospitalized in serious condition. Police say officers were responding to a call about a domestic dispute. Video taken by witness shows Blake was shot in the back as he leaned into his SUV while his 3 children sat inside. The community is demanding answers.
We're tired of it. Rodney King, we're tired of it. And right now, this is the wrong generation that this is happening to.
Police have not said whether Blake was armed or why officers opened fire. An attorney for Blake says he was breaking up a fight between 2 women. 2 officers involved have been placed on leave. The Democrats made their pitch to Americans for a change in the White House. Now, as Nadia Romero reports, it's the Republicans' turn to make their case in a scaled-down convention.
4 more years! 4 more years! As Republicans kicked off their convention and their pitch for 4 more years in the White House, President Trump made his first appearance in Charlotte, ready for the fight ahead.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
The president delivered a list of grievances, along with misleading claims over mail-in voting.
This is the greatest scam in the history of politics.
And the state's shutdowns due to the pandemic.
You know, these Democrat governors, they love shutdown until after the election's over because they want to make our numbers look as bad as possible for the economy.
While touting his administration's accomplishments.
We had the best employment numbers also.
And promising more to come.
We're getting ready to do things like nobody's ever seen before.
The president, down in the polls to Joe Biden, faces a steep challenge to rebrand his pandemic response as successful, despite more than 175,000 deaths.
I always say it, I'll say it again. There's never been a person that needed a ventilator that didn't get a ventilator. You'll soon see vaccines pouring out.
But as President Trump rallies his supporters with his unique brand of political rhetoric, his surrogates are also making the case against Joe Biden.
Joe Biden and the Democratic Party have been overtaken by the radical left.
And hoping a strong economic message will ensure re-election. In Washington, I'm Nadia Romero.
We are carrying the PBS NewsHour coverage of the Republican National Convention on K1, KPBS all week long. San Diegans will be seeing purple and gold this week to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. The California Tower in Balboa Park and the Convention Center Sales Pavilion will be lit up in the colors all week, starting at sundown tonight. The 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was officially certified on August 26 of 1920. Hair and nail salons, restaurants, bars, and all sorts of businesses have been hit hard by COVID-19, but just the opposite is true for others. KPBS reporter John Carroll shows us one profession that's rolling in business.
Like so many commercial districts in San Diego, a lot of businesses along Adams Avenue have struggled since the pandemic hit, but not the one at the northeast corner of Adams and Hamilton.
take your phone number and call you when we have a shipment of Cannondales coming in September, and I got a list of folks on that.
This is Adams Avenue Bicycles, and owner Chuck Kofer says since COVID-19 hit, business has gone through the roof.
When COVID first struck, riding a bike was still an acceptable form of exercise or getting out of your house.
Kofer says that translated to all sorts of people wheeling out their bikes that had been sitting idle and then realizing they needed repairs. Pre-COVID, that sometimes took a day or two, a week at most. Not now.
Currently, it's been 3 to 5 weeks, pretty consistent for a couple months now, actually.
In addition to the volume of bikes needing fixing, Kofer says there's also a shortage of bike mechanics. And then there's an issue with getting parts.
Certain parts haven't been available, and we've had to delay a repair for weeks and even a few over a month or two.
But it's not just the repair business that's going through the roof. Chuck Kofer tells me that he's having trouble keeping new bikes in stock as well. So if you're ready to hit the road on 2 wheels, but your bike isn't, be patient. And if you're an experienced bicycle mechanic looking for work, give Chuck a call.
Yeah.
John Carroll, KPBS News.
Here's another look at today's top stories. We are halfway through the 14-day period off the state's coronavirus watch list. If we stay on track, schools would be able to reopen on September 1st. Today, the county reported 187 new cases and no additional deaths. Our case rate also remained below 100 per 100,000 people. And Margaret Hunter, the wife of disgraced Congressman Duncan Hunter, has been sentenced to 8 months in home confinement and 3 years of probation. The couple pleaded guilty to misusing hundreds of thousands of campaign dollars for personal expenditures. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabolsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.